All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town Council of the Town of Superior for April 28th, 2025. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Shannon.
Mayor Mark Lasis.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jason Serbu.
Here.
Councilmember Jen Cowish. Councilmember Stephanie Miller. Here. Councilmember Neil Shaw.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Foster.
Here.
Councilmember Heather Craycraft.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Nicholas Hartman.
Here.
All right, up next is approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda that any council members would like to make? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Got a motion from Councilmember Shaw, second from Councilmember Craycraft. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Up next is item 3D, which is executive session to hold a conference with the town's attorney and special counsel to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute Section 24-6-4024B regarding Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport and related aviation matters. Do we have a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Got a motion from Councilmember Shaw. Second from Councilmember Miller. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Jason Serbu.
Yes.
Councilmember Stephanie Miller.
Yes.
Neil Shaw.
Yes.
Heather Craycraft.
Yes.
Mike Foster.
Yes.
And
Mayor Mark Lasis.
Yes.
Sorry.
All right. Passes unanimously.
As a Superior Town Attorney, it is my opinion that the following discussion constitutes a privileged attorney-client communication, and I am therefore recommending that no further recording be kept of this executive session.
All right. We're going into the side room. Okay. We will be back.
Recording in progress.
All right, we are back. We're on to item 3D1, which is action on our executive session. And I'm going to make a motion to authorize the town's special counsel for airport litigation to take all steps necessary to appeal the district court's decision.
Second. I'll second.
Got a motion from Mayor Lasis, second from Councilmember Shaw. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Foster?
Yes.
Councilmember Shaw?
Yes.
Mayor Lasis?
Yes.
Councilmember Miller? Yes. Councilmember Craycraft?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Serbu?
No.
Okay. Passes 5-1. And we are on to item 3E, which is our council reports. Who'd like to go first?
I'll go. At the April 16th Dr. Cog meeting, I filled in for Councilmember Shaw. I think he was off touring colleges with his daughter, which is pretty exciting. The legislative consultants provided a number of updates on several transportation bills that are working its way through a state legislature and where those currently stand. There's some that have a better chance of passing than others, and it looks like the governor is trying to shift a significant amount of money right now that directly benefits Dr. Cog into other state priorities. So Dr. Cog is going to be watching that bill very, very closely. But towards the end of the meeting, the town of Superior was actually highlighted for as a regional case study for the Grants Navigator program for how town staff collaborate with each other to identify co-benefits. This is helping break down work silos and advance more robust and impactful projects. And so I want to give Matt and his team a huge shout out and acknowledgement for all the work that they're doing to break down barriers and collaborate to make these projects more meaningful and impactful to the town of Superior. And another shout out to Councilmember Shaw for all his work that he's doing at Dr. Cog to help advance the town of Superior's needs and wishes. So I was really, really pleased at that big shout out that town of Superior got, and just wanted to share that good news. So kudos to all. That's my update.
Thanks, Mike. Who's next? Neil.
I'll go. Yes, I missed the last meeting, and I appreciate everyone covering. I don't have a lot of updates, but I will share one. I did, so Boulder County Sheriff's offer a ride-along, and it's available to anybody in the public. I did a ride-along about 2 weeks ago. It was fantastic, from 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. 12 a.m. rather, covering sort of half of one of the deputies' shifts, and you get a great understanding of kind of everything that our police have to deal with. In that night, there's a fake 911 call. There's 3 different traffic stops, domestic violence, all these different things that I learned a lot from. I think the deputies that I worked with, Arturo and Justin, were great. I think our cops sometimes get blamed for never being anywhere or always missing everything, but when you spend the day with them, the evening with them, and you realize how many things that they are trying to do, and the 2 deputies have to cover a lot of, even if it's only 4 square miles, in order to make arrests, they had to get a deputy from another town to come in to help, with one of the cars that got pulled over, the driver had a can of bear spray, so they wanted to make sure there's a second deputy there just for protection. These are the kind of things that they deal with on a daily basis that, I think sometimes we forget. One of the cars had a license plate that was 2 years expired. She couldn't drive. Our deputy drove her to her job. So those are the things that our deputies are doing. It was a great experience. I highly recommend it, not just for this council, but for everybody who's in this community. That's it for me.
Thanks, Neil.
I'll go. Just a few quick things. On the topic of the police, the chat with the chief was really well attended this last time, so thank you to everybody who showed up for that. It's a really good opportunity to learn what's going on in the neighborhood, find out ways to keep yourself safe. So I always learn a little something when I go to those, which is why I encourage everybody to go. Something I learned this time that I didn't know you could do. So this would be great in an instance, say you're at home and somebody's broken into your home and you're trying to get a hold of 911. They're asking you questions, but you don't want to be speaking because you don't want people to know where you're hiding. You can actually text 911. So I had no idea, but you can text, they will text you back. They've already pinged your location. So that's a great alternative if you're in a situation where you need to be quiet, but you do want to answer their questions. So just want to make sure everybody else was aware of that. A resident brought up something that they do when they leave town, and I thought it was brilliant. So they put padlocks on the tracks of the garage doors, and that way somebody can't break in through the garage while they're gone. So I thought that was a really good tip that they shared. And then along those same lines, if you're leaving town for a vacation, because I know summer's coming up, you can call and let the police know you're going to be out of town, and they will add your home to the extra patrols. So they will go by your home more often, and that way they can make sure everything's okay. You can let them know what cars should be around your driveway, that kind of thing. So just wanted to make everybody aware of those things since vacations are coming up. Just wanted to touch on a couple events. First, wanted to thank staff for Arbor Day. Luckily, the weather cooperated a little bit better this year, but it was really well attended. Great opportunity to meet all the different committees and volunteers. So thank you to everybody who made that happen. And then the Chamber Small Business Roundtable. So this is great for any small businesses in the area. Doesn't even have to be a small business, can be larger. And also for council members, if you want to attend, please do. It's going to be this Wednesday from 9 to 10:30 at the sports stable in the community room on the second floor. So if you are a small business owner and want to voice your concerns about anything that you're struggling with, maybe learn from other small businesses, things that they're doing, I would very much encourage everyone to attend. Just a quick reminder, the Rock Creek fire ballots are going to be due on May 6th. You can drop them off right here in front of Town Hall. There's 2 board positions that are open as well as a ballot initiative, so please make sure to get your votes in. They had a tent at the Arbor Day, and they said that a lot of residents were asking them questions about that, so I'm encouraged that a lot of people are participating in that. Then finally, for any sort of Rock Creek residents, I am very grateful that the HOA sent out an email today with the survey results because it's prompted a lot of conversation, which I think is extremely helpful. So there was 87.5 residents said that they were not in favor of the town taking over that contract and that they wanted the HOA to continue it. So like I said, prompted some really, really good conversation around this. Just want to make sure that residents are aware because it wasn't really an apples to apples comparison. So everybody is seeing it, with eyes wide open. The HOA is comparing pricing from 2021 to pricing that the town got in 2025. So obviously inflation, and you're not going to get the same pricing that you got 4 years ago, now going on 5 years ago. So just want to make sure that people realize that pricing does change, and it's very hard to predict what pricing is going to be in 2028, which is what we will be looking at. The town can leverage economies of scale. So if you look at a true apples to apples, and that's for all 3 services, the current services with Waste Connections for the HOA was $37.16 per month. With Waste Connections, just again comparing apples to apples, Waste Connection pricing for the town for the same 3 services was actually $35.03 per month. So it was a savings of $2.13 per month. We did end up contracting with Republic Services because they offered EV vehicles, and we wanted to do that because they're quieter, safer, and obviously help the environment. So that's an additional cost of $4.84 per month. Something that I'm getting a lot of feedback because I've been responding to residents today who had concerns, and a lot of the feedback is around, I don't currently compost, and so I don't want to have to pay for a service I'm not currently using, which I completely understand because none of us have unlimited disposable income. So great feedback. Just wanted to remind residents that with the current trash contract for the town, you are only paying for your trash cart size, not all the 3 sizes that you have. So you can have a 95-gallon size for recycle, 95-gallon if you want to do that much for compost, and then you have 3 cart sizes for your trash. And because you're going to be composting so much and recycling so much, because you will have all 3 options, your trash should really be pretty minimal. So just want to make everybody aware that in addition to that 95-gallon cart size, which I already quoted the price on, you have a 64-gallon option, and that's $25.74 per month. Or if you have a 32-gallon, your price goes down to $14.30 a month. So just want to make sure everybody is seeing an apples-to-apples comparison, and want to thank all the residents who have reached out because it's been some really great conversation. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Stephanie. Heather.
Thank you. Just one quick because I was going to mention Mountain View. Fire ballots due also on May 6th, so thank you. Wanted to mention and remind everyone for the Superior Historic Commission has their historic walk on Saturday, May 3rd. And again, hoping for good weather as we had for Arbor Day. It's at 2 p.m. It's only from 2 to 3:30 p.m. at Grasso Park. But if you want to join them in the museum, it'll be open beforehand. But always a great event, and would love to have more people there. That's all I have.
Jason?
I'll just make it really quick. Councilmember Foster and I got to engage with the wildlife this weekend. Yesterday, he and I rescued a little baby goose. Apparently, they're called goslings, not to be confused with Ryan. So, yeah, so we were actually able, with the help of a downtown resident, to reunite it with his parents. And rather than being attacked, because if you do get near the baby geese, they tend to get really, really hostile. They actually were very happy. And in speaking with local resident expert Jamie Dixon, who definitely cares for these animals quite a bit, she says, apparently we've made friends for life. I'm still going to stay away because I don't want to push my luck, but it was nice realizing that we were able to keep this creature back with his family rather than it just being left to perish in a storm drain. Exactly, yeah. So it was... Saving one. Yep. Mike Foster, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jason. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. A couple things to report. Today, Allison James and I attended a meeting with Shannon Cox Baker and the team at Penrose in front of CHAFA, which is the Colorado Housing Finance Authority. They had a meeting for their tax credit allocation committee, which was basically the gatekeepers of the funding from the state to make the Kite Route Crossing program happen, at least some critical financing from the tax credit program at the state level. So it was a half-hour meeting. Shannon Cox Baker presented on behalf of Penrose, and then Allison and I spoke to the impact of the Marshall Fire on the town of Superior, the town council's unanimous support for the Kite Route Crossing development, just what our housing stock is currently as a result of the Marshall Fire and how that impacted our more affordable neighborhoods as well as our more senior-focused neighborhoods, and just kind of the need for this project to get the financing it needs. So hopefully we help move the needle on that, and I appreciate Allison and Shannon's work on this really important project. A couple of other announcements. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. here at Town Hall, there's going to be a meeting from the Public Works Department on the operations and maintenance facility project. So if you're interested in that project, there'll be a presentation on it here tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then also closing on April 30th, so that is Wednesday, is a survey that is currently open on shapesuperior.com on the plans for the North and South Pool renovations. So if you are pool users, if you're interested in how your tax dollars are going to be spent on the renovations for the North and South Pool, we'd love to hear your input. Our consultants are going to be presenting tonight and then using the input from the community survey to help formulate a plan that we'll be taking action on later this spring and into the summer related to the North and South Pools. So you've got a day and a half left to get your voice heard in that survey. So that's at shapesuperior.com, and you'll see a link for the North and South Pool renovations. And that's all I've got. Matt?
Thanks, Mayor. There's going to be a groundbreaking for Block 8. You should have all received an email invitation for that. So if you plan on attending, please RSVP so they can have a head count. That's it. Thanks.
All right. Town Attorney.
So I actually do have something tonight. So agenda items F and G on your consent. So what is that, 6F and 6G? Resolutions approving settlements with Timothy Kuffner and Betsy Kuffner. I received some extremely late-breaking news from counsel for various other defendants about things that we need to talk about. So I left these things, or I didn't bring this up already because I think they're fine to be on consent tonight to approve. However, I'm going to pull the thing that I very rarely pull when you read resolutions. They say subject to final approval by the town attorney. I already spoke with the mayor, so we'll work on execution timing just to make sure everything's good. But this way we'll get approval just because of court deadlines. We'll have your approval and we'll actually execute when I can confirm with everyone that we're good to go.
All right. Thanks for that update. And our town clerk. All right. We are now on to public comment. If you are in the boardroom and you'd like to make public comment, we've got a sign-in sheet there at the desk. Please give your first and last name and the town in which you reside. We take public comment first come, first serve. 5 minutes per person, limited to the items on the consent agenda, presentations and non-agenda items. We do have a public hearing on 2 ordinances for items 7 and 8. So if you're here to speak during the public hearing, we ask that you reserve your public comments for those public hearing items. If you're participating via Zoom and like to give public comment, please use the raise hand feature and we will recognize you in the order in which we see your hand raised. So up first.
Good evening, council. I'm here to talk about the lighting ordinance, or the lighting code. It's pretty brief, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. I live in Original Town. I've been here for 15 years, and I'm a fire survivor, along with my cats. The ordinance or the code reads, lighting within, it's short, lighting within any lot that unnecessarily illuminates any other lot and substantially interferes with the use or enjoyment of such other lot is prohibited. Lighting unnecessarily illuminates another lot if it shines directly into a residence or if the standards adopted by the town could reasonably be achieved in a manner that would not substantially interfere with the use or enjoyment of neighboring properties. It's been rough to rebuild in Old Town, in Original Town. It's not been a pleasant thing. I moved back in 13 months ago. I've listened to construction vehicles pretty much every day, weekends off occasionally. Finally, the house across the street finally was completed. Now there's another one being started right next to it. I'm steeling myself for that. But what I wasn't prepared for was the lighting that was installed on the house across the street. I don't know if you can see this or not. Do you mind if I approach?
That's fine.
But this is what I look at out of my bedroom window, my primary bedroom window. This is what it looks like inside my bedroom if the drapes are open. These pictures are not modified. I had a sky view, I had a view of the stars before this happened. I lie in bed and I look at the stars at night. Now I have cardboard up in my windows. I talked to the code folks and they said, well, because it's a sconce light, it's not shining directly into your home. Well, sure feels like it's shining directly into my home. The code people did not take a look at the property. They didn't. They said they don't work those hours. But if you look at this photograph, you'll see that that sconce lighting is shining directly into one of the homes, right next to it. And when they built the house on the other side of this house, it's going to be shining in there too if they have a window over there. So it's my understanding that the lighting code is being revised, strengthened. I'd like you to keep this in mind as an exemplary case for strengthening that code. This is ridiculous. My house I wish that I had put all of my bedrooms in the back of the house now. I put them in front because I had a view of the sky. It was beautiful. Not only is the lighting bad for my property, it's terrible for wildlife. Any good architect knows to do downward lighting, especially in an area as special and as close to the wildlife boundary as this one. Birds are migrating right now, and they will be affected by this light. You know, it's crazy. is that they're not even living in this house. They don't even, to my knowledge, last I checked, they don't even have a certificate of occupancy. But they have those lights on at maximum illumination because they say they're concerned about their family's safety. Nobody's living there. You just make sure that I covered everything. But the point is, please, you know, we're a small town, at least original town. Let's try to maintain some of the character that we had in original town. It's been a huge loss. And to have this kind of violation come in after I've rebuilt is an insult. Toronto has guidelines for making bird-friendly lighting. I recommend you look at Toronto's guidelines, developed by architects. And I think that's it. I think my time's over. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Jeff Coates.
Good evening. Jeff Cody, Andrew Drive Superior. Wanted to, I couldn't comment from Town 15 tonight, so thought I'd bring a little Town 15 with me. You received this letter via email, but I wanted to read it here tonight just to put it into public record. Dear Town of Superior Council, regarding the 15-acre property owned by the Town of Superior, commonly referred to as Town 15, situated at the intersection of McCaslin Boulevard and Colton Road, the undersigned Town of Superior residents collectively request that you immediately take steps to rezone this property from its current commercial zoning to a zoning ordinance that will allow for the concepts below and preserve its natural beauty for our community. We strongly oppose any residential or commercial use of this parcel. We support OSAC's request to rezone Town 15 to open space natural. We are also open to other designations that include conditional civic or parks and recreation use. Conditional civic zoning use could include options such as a town hall, Town of Superior staff offices, community meeting space, or other building uses that are specifically designed to benefit the residents of the Town of Superior with minimal impact to the adjacent houses. Our request is to limit any such civic use to one story and no greater than 25% of the property, leaving the remaining property open space natural or parks and low impact recreational usage. Conditional parks and recreation zoning use would support the Prost 2021 master plan recommendation. Other low impact options include a natural trail system, nature preserve, or community garden. We collectively understand the challenges this parcel presents, yet it is a tremendous community asset. The natural state of this property means a great deal to many of our residents. The wildlife on and adjacent to this natural habitat must be a consideration for any future discussion. Additionally, post-Marshall Fire, we must be mindful of this parcel's proximity to the WUI. Any development this close to the WUI increases risk and available fuel for wildfire. We are requesting that this council immediately take the appropriate steps to protect this property from any future commercial or residential development. Our request is to officially rezone Town 15 as open space natural, parks and recreation, and or civic. Sincerely, Town of Superior residents. When you received this email, you also saw that we collected more than 210 signatures from more than 180 unique households. We did this in less than 5.5 days throughout the town, not just the AAB neighborhood. We're really excited by this level of civic engagement, as I'm sure you are too. We appreciate your time and attention to this, and the entire soundtrack for my public comment tonight was gathered and recorded on and directly adjacent to Town 15. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Heidi Jarris, live in Superior. Following up on Jeff's letter, I just wanted to briefly share my experience collecting signatures door to door. I had such a wonderful experience with meeting community members, not just those next to Town 15. Yes, some of the signatures are collected from there. But I personally went as far away as Elmaro Court and LaSalle, and some parts south of Colton as well, not even within viewing range at all of Town 15. And I spent about an hour in one afternoon in those areas, and every single person who opened their door, which, you know, there's a lot of solicitors and things like that, so not everybody opened their door, but every single person who opened their door in those areas thanked me enthusiastically, asked me to keep doing what I was doing to protect that space. Some really wanted open space, some were open to Parks and Rec, a few to Civic. Open space, Parks and Rec came up the most. And so I know that this issue has come up before this board before, and we have talked a lot about the neighbors that live close to that space. But I wanted to point out how many, I have even a friend in the south side of town who was taking it around her neighborhood and had enthusiastic support for open space or Parks and Rec. So I just wanted to give that context to this letter, that it isn't a limited amount of residents that are interested in protecting that space. It's pretty broad from our experience. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Brad Walker.
Good evening, board. Well, 5-1, there we have it. Kind of a predictable outcome, I would assume, because, you know, you spent $600,000 so far on the lawsuit against the airport, and you basically got roundly defeated. I know that Ms. Miller commented about how several times tonight, because I watched the work session with ACES, commented several times about how the taxpayers don't have unlimited funds and everybody's hurting because of inflation, blah, 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 blah. We've heard it all before, because at the end of the day, the proof's in the pudding. So when you go and spend another, it's going to cost you several $100,000 additional to appeal this case. I don't believe you. Now, on a positive note, this helps me because I get to go to the national organizations as well as the local airport and demonstrate that you folks basically have zero leadership. You've demonstrated that all you want to do is litigate. You don't want to talk to the airport. You don't want to talk to the aviation community. You don't want to do anything that is reasonable. And so this helps me. And that's a good thing. But I think the outcome was to be given a 5-1 vote. And so, yeah. On a national note, the leader of AOPA recently wrote a public letter to the FAA. And basically, he did not spell out Town of Superior, but his words basically talked about frivolous lawsuits and what the FAA and Congress can do to fight those and work to prevent those from happening. I can assure you, those comments were directly related to what's happening here in our town. Mr. Serbu, I know that you have exemplified great leadership on this matter, but your town board members continue to cut you off at the knees. And I think that this plays into my hand very well and cuts down the ability for you to have communications with people. It's unfortunate. I know that you've tried to, you've taken a lot of heat over this, but you know, as long as the town board decides to continue to sue the airport, I guess we'll just continue to have status quo. Or as Forrest Gump said, stupid is as stupid does. Have a good night.
Thank you for your comments.
Suzanne Devaney.
Good evening, Council. Good to see you again. My name is Suzanne Devaney, and I'm a 25-year resident of Superior. Full disclosure, I'm also a member of the Mountain View Fire Board of Directors. However, tonight, I'm speaking strictly as a private citizen, and the views and opinions here are my own. On May 6, voters that reside within the Mountain View community will be asked to vote on 2 items, 2 Board of Directors and ballot issue 6A. This will be, as you probably all know if you've received your ballots, the first time in a very long time that the election has actually been mail-in rather than a polling place. There are 4 candidates currently for the Board of Directors, and I'd like to speak a little bit about 2 of them. I have known Mark Spangler for more than 20 years. He has worn many hats in the 20-plus years as a Superior resident, Scouts, church, Monarch Marching Band, just to name a few. For many years, he was also the board president of Rocky Mountain Fire, which merged with Mountain View in 2021. He was instrumental in getting the fire station built at Indiana and Colton, and there's actually a plaque on the building dedicated to him. I was thrilled when he agreed to throw his hat in the ring this election cycle, and he would make an excellent addition to the board. Furthermore, if I should choose to leave at the end of my term in 2 years, I haven't made a decision on that quite yet, Superior would continue with Mark to have an advocate on the board. I'm also supporting Cole Lathrop, who currently sits on the Mountain View Fire Board and is running for his 2nd term. Our board members are limited to 2 terms. He was a firefighter for many years and brought that perspective to the board. And during his term, he has continued to advocate for the firefighters while gaining an understanding that we are an entire agency that includes firefighters, administration, and community. The other 2 candidates, you may be aware, have been endorsed by the local union. You may have received the door hangers that they've been passing around, and there was some mailing postcards that they also sent out. It's a well-funded campaign for those 2 individuals. Just a few words about ballot initiative 6A. Again, as a private citizen of the district, the Colorado Firefighter Safety Act is actually the short title for Senate Bill 1325. Having read the full text of the bill, I find the short title to be misleading. Excluding subsection 201, which is the actual short title designation, and subsection 202, which is the legislative declarations, little else in this bill speaks to actual firefighter safety. Based on the other subsections as well, it's evident to me that this bill is about union recognition and collective bargaining, not safety. Some of the other subsection titles include obligation to meet and confer, obligation to negotiate in good faith, collective bargaining agreement, impasse resolution, and strikes prohibited. The local firefighters union has launched a well-funded campaign to get 6A passed. As a private citizen, I am advocating for a no vote on 6A. If passed, the governance of the fire district as it relates to collective bargaining would be dictated by Senate Bill 1325 rather than by the Board of Directors who have been elected by the voters to oversee the district. Just in conclusion, a facts page for Senate Bill 1325, including the effect that the ballot measure would have on the district, as well as arguments in favor and arguments against, is available on the Mountain View Fire website by going to the homepage, clicking on voting info, and then clicking on Colorado Firefighter Safety Act at the bottom of that page. That sounds like the walk-off music before they send out the shepherd's crook. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional public comment here in the boardroom? All right, I'll turn to Zoom. Anybody on Zoom like to give public comment? Now's your chance. All three of you, I see you. All right, nobody's got their hands raised, so public comment is closed. And we are now moving on to item 4, which is our presentation section of the evening. And we have a presentation from Sister Carmen Community Center, starting off at presentation 4A.
Thanks, Mayor.
Sit down. Should we be turning this around the right way?
Oh, that would probably be helpful if you want to use the arrows up and
I'm not sure
down.
if I want to use arrows or not. Probably. Let's see.
So arrows will go this way, or you can use the mouse.
Okay. Good evening,
Welcome.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, town staff. First off, I just want to say thank you so very much for the support that you've given Sister Carmen Community Center over the years. I'm Suzanne Crawford. I'm the CEO of Sister Carmen Community Center. I celebrated my 20th anniversary with the center in January. So some of you may know me. Since I'm not really sure how familiar you are with what we do, I put together this presentation for you. They'll tell you a little bit about us, how we look at serving the community, and the different things that we do to serve the community. So our mission, and it's been our mission for about 50 years now, is to provide assistance to residents of Lafayette, Louisville, Superior, and Erie who are in need without discrimination. A little bit of our history. I won't read this slide, but we were actually founded by a Catholic nun named Sister Carmen, who was sent up to this area to do outreach, mostly to migrant communities. And while she was doing that outreach, she discovered that there were people that needed food and clothing. So she and some volunteers from a local Catholic church in Lafayette started collecting food and clothing and other items in someone's garage. And that was how we started. And that was in the very early 1970s. So we are coming up on our 50th anniversary here pretty soon. We moved into the building that we're in right now on Aspen Ridge Drive in Lafayette. And we bought the building in 2010 and moved in 2011. We still have the facility on Baseline Road, which is where our thrift store is. And then in 2012, we were designated an official family resource center by the state of Colorado and the Family Resource Center Association. These are our agency core values: to make Sister Carmen Community Center a hate-free zone, to serve without discrimination, to act and speak with honesty, accuracy, and truthfulness, strive to understand and respect during all aspects of communication, create a climate of caring and mutual understanding, respect privacy and confidentiality, and accept responsibility and consequences for our own communication and actions, even if the impact was unintentional. We believe that everyone has strengths and that everyone's doing the best that they can, and that positive change occurs in the context of relationships, and that everyone needs help sometimes. No one's truly completely independent. So the simplest definition of poverty is just that it's the extent to which an individual does without resources. And there are 11 essential resources, including money, or financial, mental and cognitive, emotional, language, social capital, physical mobility, spiritual, integrity and trust, motivation, role models, and hidden rules. And we are constantly trying to help folks become more familiar with those and to connect them with the resources that they don't have. This is a group of women that are in one of our parenting classes. So how do we help? So we have three main program areas. Nutrition and healthy living it includes our food bank, which serves about 300 families a week. They can come up to 3 times a month. And we serve about 3,500 unduplicated families a year and through our food bank. And we distribute about 1.4 million pounds of food. Yeah, the number has increased since I originally made this slide. Over the last 2 years, and especially the last year, we've seen a constant uptick in people accessing the food bank. And that includes in the last 3 months of the first 3 or 4 months of this year, we've seen an increase in people coming because of inflation and job loss. So also in our nutrition and healthy living program area, we have exercise classes. So we have Zumba and yoga classes. Those are free. We have a wonderful community garden where we teach people to grow food. And then we refer to our healthcare partners, such as Mental Health Partners and Clinica Family Health Services. That's just a look at our food bank shopping floor. It is actually set up like a little grocery store. People get to make their own choices about what they want for their families, and it's really based on the number of people in the family. Certain things have a point value, certain things they can take as much as they want, and other things there are limits based on the number of people in the family. One thing to note is that we always have a pretty good selection of fresh produce on hand. We really feel very strongly that we want people to be able to access nutritious food. We also want to have culturally relevant foods available. So sometimes we buy things that we might not get donated. For instance, we have partnerships with some of the tiendas in Lafayette. We have partnerships with some of the Indian grocery stores and other partnerships. So advocacy is our second program area. This is what other agencies might call case management. We don't believe that people are cases, nor do they need our management. So we're very intentional in the language that we use when we're talking with people and when the language we use when we're talking to the public. So as you can see, in 2024, we gave out over $1.2 million in financial assistance. That included rent assistance, utilities assistance, water bill assistance, assistance with eyeglasses, sometimes car repairs, and other miscellaneous assistance. But the bulk of it is really rent assistance and utilities assistance. The reason for that is because we're really focused on keeping people in their housing. And so that's where we put the most of our financial assistance money to try to keep them from becoming homeless. That amount of money really only fulfills about half of the requests that we receive, unfortunately, because the amount of need is so great. Something that might surprise you is that about 12% of families in Boulder County are living in poverty. And what's even more surprising is about a quarter of families in Boulder County struggle to make ends meet every month. So they struggle to pay their childcare, their rent or mortgage, to pay for their food. By accessing our food bank or getting a little bit of financial assistance, sometimes we can help keep them housed, whereas otherwise they might lose their housing. Also in advocacy, we do resource and referral connections. We help with goal setting. We have long-term stability programs. So we have a program called Pathways to Economic Mobility that we started several years ago. This helps connect adult learners who want to go back to school with programs where they can get a certificate or a 1 or 2 year degree, and then they will make a livable wage afterwards. So it's very targeted to certain programs where they can go, they can get some education and then get out and hopefully get a job making a livable wage. During that program, we provide financial supports to help them stay successfully in school, and then we connect them with financial aid or scholarships. This is Lauren, one of our bilingual advocate supervisors with one of our participants. So our third program area is community and family education. A lot of people don't know that we do this, but we have a variety of different programs and classes available. free of charge to community members. So one of our favorites is the Family Leadership Training Institute. I'm betting you that at some point, you haven't known it, but that one of our participants has gotten up here in front of you to advocate for their family, because during that program, they learned the confidence and skills to get up and come and talk in front of, town boards, school boards, things like that. Digital literacy, it's a huge need, believe it or not. A lot of people either don't know how to use a device or don't know how to access the internet or don't have a connection to an internet. So we've been really focused for the past 6 years on trying to solve that problem. Parenting classes and support groups. We've got 3 different parenting classes for parents of different age children. They're evidence-based, and the goals of those classes are to keep families from getting involved with the child welfare system. And then we also have Circle of Parents, which is a parent-led support group for folks whose family members have been dealing with substance abuse issues. And then 4 times or 5 times a year, we have community fun nights. We just had one on Friday. It was Dia de los Niños event, where families can come and have fun for free at our center. This is just a picture of one of our digital literacy classes. So the town of Superior, specific to you, 60 families received financial assistance in 2024 to the tune of over $71,000. 71 families visited a food bank, and those are folks that are coming regularly 2 or 3 times a month. We gave out 42,000 pounds of food, and then over 20 individuals participated in classes and support groups. This may seem like a small number, but it has been consistently growing over the years. Just a little bit more about us. We have 41 staff members, 20 of which are bilingual, including myself, 250 volunteers. We have multi-generational. We have people either volunteering and on staff for every living generation, every walk of life. Our staff speaks 7 languages, and then we have translation services available for other folks. About 31% of our revenue comes from government. We stick with state and local grants. Individual donors, about 25% of our revenue. Non-government organizations, so private family foundations, companies, churches. We usually have to write a grant proposal for that funding. That's about 24%. And then our thrift store, our very, very popular thrift store, brings in about 20% of our income. And I just threw that in there. You may have noticed my shirt, but we are very big at Sister Carmen on wanting everyone to feel connected and welcome and like they belong at our center. And we really believe in loving the people that are around us, whether it be our staff or our volunteers or the participants that are coming to us for assistance. So thanks again for your support. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to open it up to questions or not. Happy to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you, Suzanne, for that presentation and for all the work that Sister Carmen does in this community. It's obviously an institution, and you serve so many people, not just in Superior, but in the region as a whole. So we're really appreciative to it. I don't have any specific question other than thank you for coming here and giving these presentations. It's really important to periodically educate us, remind us who you are, who you're serving, what you're doing in the community, and how we can help and how it's helping the people in our community as well. Every year, obviously, we go through our budgeting process, and it's important to know there are several organizations that we help with funding requests. So staying top of mind and giving these presentations helps us do that job a little easier. So
happy to do it.
I appreciate hearing from you and most importantly, just all the work that you do to help people in need. It's truly remarkable. So thank you.
Thanks for giving me your ear for a few minutes. Appreciate it.
Others? Questions? Comments? Yeah.
Suzanne, if I was interested in volunteering or making a donation, how would I go about doing that?
Our website is sistercarmen.org. There's a tab specifically for volunteering where you can go ahead and fill out an application and you'll get a call within usually 48 hours. And you can also make a donation online through our website. Thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to item 4B, which is our presentation from the Boulder County Office of Disaster Management and the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. Welcome, Allison James, and our first responders.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I'm Allison James, Superior's Disaster Preparedness and Recovery Manager. In December of 2021, the Marshall Fire swept across Boulder County with unprecedented speed and devastation. Fueled by the high winds and dry conditions, it became the most destructive wildfire in Colorado history, destroying almost 1,100 structures and damaging many more and displacing thousands. Tonight's presentation highlights how, in the aftermath of that disaster, the town of Superior, working closely with our residents, 911 Center, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office, Mountain View Fire Rescue, and the Office of Disaster Management have come together to not only respond and rebuild, but to plan ahead to create a stronger and more resilient community. It quickly became clear that Superior needed a sustained strategic approach, not just to help residents with immediate needs, but to manage activities like FEMA and grant reimbursements and to prepare for the future. 3 days after the fire, the town established the Disaster Preparedness and Recovery Department to help lead recovery efforts, build resilience, and strengthen our critical systems. Some of our early areas of focus included family assistance, hazardous debris removal operations, and funding coordination. Embedding recovery into town operations helped shorten the time from crisis to more stability, while also preparing our systems and community for future challenges. Our disaster event taught us that preparedness must be a year-round priority. We launched resource websites and built strong partnerships with agencies like the ones you see here, Boulder Valley School District, and others. Our public education efforts hit the ground running with 36 public outreach events in 2023, 28 in 2024, and we've already hosted 7 this year. My shameless plug tonight is to please join us at the Safety and Resiliency Fair this Saturday from 12 to 2 at the Superior Community Center. Staff participation in activities continues to strengthen our community and our emergency response resiliency and recovery capabilities. We actively participate in and lead staff training programs, pursue professional certifications in topics like wildfire mitigation, support continuity of operations planning, adopting the Boulder County Emergency Operations Plan, and engaging in regional exercises. Mitigation work is advanced through our goal of wildfire risk reduction and land stewardship. We work on various initiatives. We were core team members of 2 community wildfire protection plans, support the Fireshed Grasslands Working Group on best management practices, and partner with the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department to restore native landscapes and expand vegetative fuels reduction. Our efforts secured $2.7 million in mitigation funding together too, ensuring a long-term investment in reducing wildfire risks. These mitigation actions today are shaping a safer tomorrow. Finally, we deepened our focus on resilience, working to build a community that can withstand and recover quickly from disasters. Key initiatives include neighborhood assessments with wildfire partners to help educate and identify community vulnerabilities, adopting new safety ordinances, and offering programs to support emotional recovery. We are also preparing for the adoption of the State Wildland Urban Interface Code to align future development with state resilience goals. As we continue to strengthen our local resilience, we are also committed to sharing our lessons learned and best practices, helping other communities to prepare, respond, and recover more effectively. Most recently, we had the opportunity to share our lessons and experiences with Los Angeles, contributing to broader efforts to strengthen resilience nationwide. Each of these actions is creating ripples of impact, strengthening infrastructure, deepening community connections, and building a more adaptable, prepared town. Every lesson from the Marshall Fire has shaped our work. Each project, partnership, and investment reflect a clear commitment not just to get through this disaster and future disasters, but to thrive as much as possible in the aftermath. I would now like to take a moment to introduce Steve Silberman, the director of the Boulder County 911 Communications Center. Our 911 partners have been instrumental in helping us strengthen emergency communications and coordination. Their work ensures that in times of crisis, critical information flows quickly and effectively to protect our residents. We are grateful for their collaboration and continued partnership as we work to build a more resilient Superior. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you guys and present a little bit about our alert and warning system. I'm going to talk to you today at a very high level of a very complex, very detailed technology system, and it's a system of systems. So feel free to ask questions after, or we can have lunch or talk for many hours about this stuff as we go on and go through. Oops. Where's my advanced slide?
Yeah, you can use the right arrows.
Oh, it's PDF. It's a scroll. There we go. All right. So, following the Marshall Fire, sorry if I made you hungry with this slide. Following the Marshall Fire, one thing we recognized is we need to do a better job of education. And so my analogy of our emergency alerting system is a layered approach. You could use tools in a toolbox. I chose the Joey Tribbiani layered sandwich here. So there are multiple aspects of our alert and warning system. And the first one is you. And when I say you, it's not just everybody in this room, but it's our community members, our first responders. Everybody has a personal responsibility to take action if they feel threatened at any time. And it's really important not to wait for an emergency alert. The second is door to door. We will never, ever have the statistics of how many lives are saved by our first responders, public safety, law enforcement, the deputies, firefighters, going door to door to help move people along in any kind of emergency or pass information. Not to forget the neighbors helping neighbors. We never say you have to like your neighbor, but it's always very important to understand if your neighbor needs extra assistance and have a relationship with that person. In the time of need, you may need to help them. Then we get into the technology. The Everbridge is our technology solution. It is a contracted vendor. There are many vendors out there, but the one we use is Everbridge. We've been a customer there since 2009 and been through many iterations of their software. But that system provides multiple layers of technology notification. The first one is going to be to landlines. I know there aren't many people out there with landlines anymore, but we ingest all of the landline information that includes from Xfinity or Comcast or CenturyLink 4 times a year. Those numbers are in our system automatically. And then you have your opt-in side of things, which you can sign up for an account. You can choose voice alerts, text, emails, faxes, if you still have a fax machine. Not to forget the sirens that are out there for outdoor warning. Superior has them. Social media and PIO, or public information involvement. We have multiple apps that we try to promote. The first one is going to be the Everbridge Public Safety app that gives you access to your account. And then ReachWell. ReachWell is our translation service solution. If you download the ReachWell app and opt into the BOCO alert group, you can receive those alerts in over 120 different languages instantly as they're sent out by us. It is also an opt-in system. And then lastly, and certainly not least, is the IPAWS, which is the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System provided through FEMA. It is the federal system that is governed through FEMA. We have access to it through Everbridge, and that's where we can send wireless emergency alerts, or WEA, emergency alerting system, notifications, and NOAA weather radio. The WEAs are the ones that are better known as your Amber Alert style broadcast messages. EAS is that ticker that comes across your broadcast television or across your radio. And then NOAA weather radio is that standalone device. As you can see, there's layered approach to any emergency alert. Every emergency has its own need when it comes to which systems that we send it out through. Every single alert has a severity level of an advisory, a warning, or an order. An advisory is defined as, hey, something's happening in your area, you should probably be aware. A warning is, hey, you should be aware of it, and it's something that's going to impact you, and if you need to take extra time to move or evacuate or shelter in place, do so now. And then an order is take immediate action due to an imminent life threat. Every message also has a request or an action type. So it's going to be an evacuation, shelter in place, climb to higher ground in a flooding situation, or we can also use it for missing persons. Every time we send an alert, there's a link that's within that alert that takes you to the full message. That full message is the text that the dispatchers are creating from the information given to them by first responders. That information also includes a map that's zoomable, and you can figure out if you received that alert, if you're impacted in that area. We've spent many years with a lot of collaboration with public safety officials, elected officials, town councils, and over the years what we've developed is the request for an alert comes from those that are in the field. It is not from the dispatch center. We're the ones that facilitate it, manage the systems, and make sure they work properly. But it's their first responders, the firefighters and deputies in the field that are the ones asking for this. You're going to hear Dave talk a little bit about the cheat sheet that we have to make it more fluid and simple in a few slides. We've developed predetermined polygons and predetermined shapes across the entire county. So there's 4 examples of pictures here. We can send an alert from a radius from an intersection. We have preset polygons for what we call all hazard, but they have a focus of wildfire. Those are all in the hands of all of our first responders. So all they have to do is pull up that app and pull up that map, tell us what the number or the name of the polygon is. We can load it, create that message through our template, and send it out. The time that it takes to craft these things custom and give about border and actually verbalize this takes a long time. So that's why we preset these in the software. And lastly, and surely not least, we've taken every single drainage in the entire county and developed flood polygons. That's based off of FEMA 100-year floodplain data, Colorado hazard mapping, and individual hydrology data from burn scars. Created a map, sliced them up, and we have that preloaded in the system also. I'd like to introduce Mr. Dave Solomon, who you guys all know very well.
Thank you and good evening. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the law side and what our roles and responsibilities are. Steve hit on some of the job aids that have been created to help the people that are out in the field. So when we need to send out an alert, some type of notification, this is a very quick, easy job aid of what does dispatch need so that they can get out the alert properly, right? So the action requested, the severity level, determine the area for sending the message. This is really where it comes down to those predetermined geographical areas on the polygons that are mapped out are extremely helpful, because when you're trying to talk to a dispatcher on the phone and say, okay, I need from Colton and then go east a little bit to Indiana and all that, and they're trying to figure this out on the map of what you need to, what you're looking at to evacuate. This is the polygon is just a tremendous resource for us. And then considerations for supervisors that we're looking at of safe route for first responders, railroad, you're looking kind of a little bit bigger picture of things that the on-scene deputy might not be looking at. They're just looking at, I need this place moved. Well, there's a railroad track or there's, something that's going to impact that. And so we'll work on that. So this has been a great addition to what we do. Kind of how an evacuation process unfolds. So first to arrive can call for the evacuation. I think the important aspect of this is it's any of the first responders. If Louisville happened to be the first responder, they can call for an evacuation in Superior. If we went into Louisville and we were the first responder and they were not there, we're able to do that evacuation. The relationships that we have and have maintained and built even stronger between surrounding agencies has been really good, and so that's very helpful. The use of the job aids, we have specific traffic control points identified. One thing that I really wanted to touch on this is a lot of people say, well, do you have evacuation routes? And can you publish those evacuation routes? And yes, we have identified evacuation paths, I will call them, not routes, because they can change fluidly. And if I tell you, Councilmember Stephanie Miller, when you leave, you need to go down Pitkin to Rock Creek to McCaslin and leave that direction. If I tell you that's your evacuation route, then when a fire is coming through and I can't push you to Rock Creek because the fire is coming there and I need to push you a different direction, you'll now be completely confused, right? So we don't want to push those out. But what we did do is we identified the different routes and really the traffic control points identified. And then I'll go through this urban evacuation hierarchy that Director Chart has put together, which is awesome. And then move on to critical evacuation facilities, mutual aid to fill out traffic management plan and what we're going to do going door to door and how we're going to manage that. So the urban evacuation hierarchy pyramid. Number one is kind of start at the bottom there, pre-incident preparedness levels of the public and of first responders, right? So we have to be prepared to be able to do something before we can actually do something. Next up in the pyramid, integrated C2 structure. So that's basically the start of command, incident command system, swarm, mission command, and speed of mutual aid. Swarm is the biggest thing that I can really stress upon when going into a major event like this. Because you're trying to set up command, you're trying to do all these different things and get with fire, and it's next to impossible. So what you're really doing, the first deputy on scene, the first sergeant on scene, whoever is there, they're really trying to do a mission command. What is my top priority right now? Is it evacuation? Is it traffic? What is that, right? And then, of course, the resources are coming. You're not going to be the only one trying to do all this. And, calling for mutual aid, getting all those things in place. And that's really where it starts. Then you're learning where the fire direction, rate of speed, intensity, all that stuff. And then going into the polygon, quick alerts, hey, I need to evacuate SUP 1 on polygon. I can let dispatch know it's immediately going out very quick. Egress and ingress protection. So that not only means getting people out, but it also means getting fire equipment in or more law enforcement in, and the traffic management in its place. From there, we kind of determine, is it door to door? Is it self-evacuation, assisted evacuation, defend in place, safe refuge area? We've had multiple meetings, and Chard can probably speak to this more than I can, with Boulder Valley Schools about that defend in place concept. It's scary for people because you're now defending a structure in place, and so you're making a defensible space around that structure, and then fire comes there. You can shelter people inside that business, inside a school, and then the fire department is there to protect that space. So what does an evacuation process really look like today? This is all in your packet, so I won't read through every bullet point. The things, again, that I want to stress upon is police and fire departments are the ones responsible for making those evacuation decisions. And again, it's the first one on scene can make that decision. And then, deciding an evacuation is needed, where it's needed, and what polygons you're going to evacuate, that type of thing. So it's it's definitely a collaborative effort when you think about, evacuations and how you're going to do it, and other people are stepping in at the same time. One of the I'll go back to the storm portion of the very beginning of event. That is probably the most difficult because you're on your own, you've got limited people, and you're trying to find what is the most important mission at the time. We're doing multiple classes throughout the year for deputies, for supervisors to be able to go in and understand that swarm, because not everybody's experienced it. Some of us have been on swarm multiple times and can understand what the next process is, and some of us have not. And so putting those trainings together and being more prepared for the next event is always something very important. Of course, the community gets the evacuation order, signed up for Everbridge, Reachwell. Steve talked about all that stuff. Fire department works to control the fire. Police handle traffic management and door-to-door evacuations. Something I'll touch on door-to-door evacuations. So with even fires in Larimer County, we have teams put together. They're all on SWAT, so they have take-home cars and they have special equipment, that type of thing. And so Larimer County will deploy their SWAT team out to help us evacuate. We will also reciprocate that. Last year we did that multiple occasions where, depending on where the fire was, we're all helping each other out, and they're able to deploy in a very rapid response, right? So they're not having to go to headquarters, find a car, get equipment, all that. Everything is with them at all times. They can deploy really rapidly. And then, of course, the EOC Center opens, great messaging, starts helping us going through ASF 13 for public safety side. And that's really where things start expanding and becoming more organized and less of a swarm of a big event. All right.
Thank you for having me tonight, Council. Sterling Folden, Deputy Chief of Operations for Mountain View Fire. I'll talk to you briefly about fire response since the Marshall Fire and what we've learned specifically at Mountain View, and then how that's also kind of built interactions, not just locally, but also nationally with other agencies. So the fire response, we'll talk about fire response, the indice, response changes, some water supply, and some training for that. Let's see if I can go the right way. One of the big changes we had, and this is all in conjunction with all the partners in the back room. We couldn't have done any of this by ourselves by any means, but one of the big changes we've made is fire indice-based dispatch. So based on the fire weather for the day, we change our response level now. So when there's a high fire danger, we commit a lot of resource right out of the gate now, instead of waiting for those first arriving units to find out what we have and then dispatch more units. And then that changes. So on a low indice day, we'll send a minimal amount of apparatus, so we're not over responding to those, but on the high days, we'll send many more things. And how that occurs is the Sheriff's Department has a fire management office. They figure out these response levels by taking these into account. The weather index, the fuels, and the winds and things like that. They'll put together a score, and then that is sent to dispatch, and then dispatch adjusts our dispatch level according to that on those days. Let's try to go the right way. Some other things we've learned, it's a whole spectrum of things for Mountain View, from how do we get food to responders when there's nothing because we've evacuated all sorts of things. How do we maintain our stations when we've turned off power and gas? We've all the way up through communications channels. So we've instituted more communications plans on the radio. Fire indice, we have a more robust recall. Another large project we're working on with our partner agencies is now closest unit with the city of Boulder. So in the county of Boulder, we work closest unit, so there's no boundaries with the fire departments. Closest fire truck, closest ambulance responds to the incident, regardless of whose district it is. We're working towards incorporating the city of Boulder into that as well, because we try to work closely together with them. So that's another big change that we have going on as well. Another thing is water supply. So we're working on putting in a 20,000 gallon cistern over at the trailhead by Marshall and 93. That's a new addition to water supply that we're working in conjunction with City of Boulder Open Space, CDOT, and all of our partners to get that put in the ground. It'll be a 24/7, 365 water source. We've also worked with the Louisville Water Treatment Plant to have better access to the fire hydrants in that area as well. Sorry, I keep going the same way. And we can talk about urban conflagration risk. So this is the fire tetrahedron kind of spinoff that Director Chard was able to make for us. So you can see that the center are the critical things: critical fire flow, water grid isolation. If we don't have that, we're put at a disadvantage in a conflagration. And then we need fuel management, fire suppression capacity, and then management of all those things as well. And what we learned during the Marshall Fire was that typically fire departments like nice and orderly command and control, where we arrive, we stage, we wait for someone to tell us what to do, we go do that, we can report back to them. Well, in these incidents that are rapidly expanding, and this is less than 1%, but we have to adapt because it doesn't work that way. Everybody has to go to work right away, and you kind of lose accountability amongst everybody. So we're learning from our law enforcement friends about how to operate without that total orderly command structure, and then how to shorten that gap so we can get back to that orderly command structure as soon as possible. You're stressing. You want to come up here? No. Okay, I'm just checking. I was just making sure he's standing behind me.
Make sure you get caught if you fall.
Thank you very much. And you can see the outside. We talk about building hardening, which is a big topic of discussion lately in everybody's community with the WUI code that's coming, spacing construction with that. Another big is fuel type and ember production. Marshall Fire was a large ember production, huge wind speeds on the other side, and sustained gusts. So that all kind of encompasses this thing. And so with closest unit, including the City of Boulder, better water supply, we're helping to reduce these and keep our response tighter and faster to what we've been doing. Keep going this way. That's living with risk. The other thing that this has allowed us is to become part of national movements. Last week, we were able to talk to UL Laboratories and their Fire Safety Research Institute. They toured the area because they're interested in building codes and building construction and fuels and what we use to build our houses with, all sorts of things. So they came out and took a tour. We were able to present our situation that was here, and they'll take all that back to help develop future code for nationwide things and stuff like that. So that's a very quick overview, trying to get people in and out. So next is Director Chard with ODM from Boulder County and the City of Boulder.
Actually, Chief Folden, can I ask a quick question? One of the things you went by were the indices, like the fire indices, and preemptively being prepared, on high fire days. And I think we've all noticed that the number of high fire days has been going up. What's that doing to staffing and having extra folks on hands and trying to work around staffing?
It is a little bit of his alert fatigue or alarm fatigue, where day after day, if you're in a red flag situation, we're high indice based. Then on those high indice based, we try to bring back 1 or 2 engines. It does lead to some burnout amongst the organization, trying to get people to come back and work extra duty for it. But we're trying to be as sparingly as we can so people know it's important when we come back. And then with relying on outside agencies with the no borders approach, and then we'll be including the City of Boulder, that will help reduce that as well, because it makes us with a deeper response pool, so we don't necessarily have to always pull in people for overtime.
All right, thanks. And also, I didn't recognize you without the mustache. So,
yeah, I'm hiding from the law, but just kidding. But thank you. Sorry, any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question. So about the water supply. So it's good to hear that there's the new cistern going in. One of the challenges with the Marshall Fire response was, there was obviously a lot of coordination between us and Louisville and sharing the water and whatnot, but the water pressure, just because there was such demand. So I'm curious as to whether there's been any thought about any infrastructure improvements that we could be making, here in Superior or Louisville or Boulder County that could kind of help to address that pressure problem. Are there additional pump stations or something that can be put in place to make sure that we don't have a situation like we had during the Marshall Fire where you just didn't have the water pressure?
And Allison might be able to answer easier with talking to utilities, but I know some communities that as they build new communities, they'll put in remote capable shutoff valves so you can start isolating the zones. So if one part of town's not as affected, you can shunt water to another side, or In the unfortunate case, if you have lost several homes, you can close that off, right? Because every home has a 3/4 inch line or a 1 inch line to it, and you start getting dozens of those. That's a large pipe that's just pumping water out all the time, right? So you start to look for remote controlled infrastructure if you can, or at least isolation valves in strategic places, which is a big help. I know Excel has started looking at that for power and gas as well.
I'd certainly be interested in kind of knowing what our options are and if there's any specific recommendations, so we could, when we're looking at our capital improvement schedules, we could look to see what investments could be made.
Absolutely. I'll work with our code and prevention people and come up with some suggestions, and I'll tie back in with Allison, and she can bring them back to you guys if that's okay.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions I can answer? Great, thanks.
Thanks, Chief. All right, good evening, board, and I'm closing it out, so you're almost done. Really what I'm bringing up here is then, as you see in this slide, living with risk. And this is really what is a very important community or whole community discussion and perspective. And the things that you look at when we talk about living with risk is where we build, how we build, what lifestyle habits we form within that community, and then what we do or don't do to mitigate. These are very critical when you look at the hazard profile of a community, and the types of risks and hazards you have create a risk profile. So what can you do, what can the community do to help lower that risk? Because the things that we talk about here, where we live, how we live, things of, structural separation distances, the way we're talking about water supply, when you saw that tetrahedron looking geometric figure, the importance of being able to maintain water flow when if fire does get into the community, how do we maintain it to a manageable size, right? And after these mitigation efforts, which we hope hold, if they don't, then we're into response. And when we respond, then we're leaning back into preparedness and how the individual community members are prepared, and having a community that really understands the importance of taking action on their own and being responsible for their safety, and then also making sure that we have a well-prepared law enforcement, 911 center, fire department to be able to go in and manage the impacts or the consequences when these hazards do manifest themselves, become paramount to being able to make it through that disaster cycle and then position us for being in recovery. So a lot of times what I see is we spend a lot of time in preparedness, we spend a lot of time in mitigation, which are definitely appropriate, but we also don't want to have the hard conversation, which is what if we do have another hazard that does impact our community to a significant level? And then having that thoughtful sort of futuristic discussion around what do we need to have in place ready to go for recovery. And many times we're in that space when the community's hurting, they're wanting to rebuild. Policymakers are also struggling within resource constraints and trying to understand the next steps. So having that in place ahead of time also helps build some resiliency in how we rebuild our communities. And that leads to then also, what's your commitment to your disaster management capabilities? A lot of times these become one-off things or checking the box, but where the disaster management, emergency management enterprise can pay off dividends is in these many spaces. Risks are changing as climate changes. There's many factors. It's not just climate, it's also we're growing community. There's also many factors in communities that are creating downward pressures, housing affordability, traffic, all these things, how we design, and the things that we're trying to deal with, the day-to-day pressures that I know you're all facing, and trying to balance that of how do we build our communities, meet the needs of our community, but then also accept risk, and then what's the risk tolerance or risk level that we're willing to have. These kind of programmatic investments across all of your departments are the ways that you're able to look at that with a more thoughtful sort of preparedness and mitigation perspective and lens to help you make those tough decisions and decide where you're going to go, because they're hard decisions, and sometimes you're threading the needle to try to find the right way of how do we grow the community, how do we live in the community, how do we balance that with what we got to do with risk, because we live in a great space. Mother Nature, though, usually always kind of demonstrates through storms and floods and fires. As we say here in the West, especially in the foothills, we have a cycle. We grow it, we drought it or dry it out, we burn it, and then we flood it, and then we repeat. And that has been part of our history here in this county going back hundreds of years. and we'll be there for the future and how we think of that thoughtfully, how we position ourselves, or how we're able to move and live within this great, wonderful space we call Boulder County. So thank you, and we've got some great folks here. I just want to give a shout out to Sister Carmen, didn't mention it, but when we have a disaster, she does wonderful work within our mass care world, and they always surge. They've been a great partner for many, many years. I just want to make sure you understand that and give her the props. So Suzanne did a great job on that presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you all to our first responders. Allison, were you coming up to close it out, or were you opening up the floor to questions here?
Hi, thank you for listening to our presentation.
Okay. All right. You just looked like you were eager to get up and say something. So I do have a question for Sergeant Solomon, actually, if you wouldn't mind coming up. So one of the things that I appreciate the point in the presentation where you made about evacuations are fluid and you can't necessarily publish a fixed route because the conditions on the ground could change, and you don't want to give somebody outdated information or confuse them in one way. Right. We certainly heard a lot of people during the Marshall Fire with their experiences evacuating on Rock Creek Parkway and issues with the lighting on Colton Road going into Boulder County. I know you've addressed this multiple times, but can you just kind of speak to the lessons learned from the Marshall Fire with respect to that experience that people had trying to evacuate? And then really the question that I have is, has anybody done like the math on the number of households that we have in that area and what the roads can actually handle, and what is a reasonable expectation for the community to have for how long it should actually take to evacuate? Because I think that's part of like the whole preparedness thing. If people think that it should take 5 minutes to get out of town and it takes 3 hours, that doesn't meet their expectation. If they're coming into it thinking like reasonably it should take me 20 to 30 minutes and it takes 20 to 30 minutes, we're meeting the expectations. So do we know what it should take to actually evacuate that neighborhood and what lessons have been learned from?
I don't think we've done, okay, I'll let him take that one. On the lessons learned from when we were trying to evacuate and having a complete gridlock in Superior. Some of the lessons learned was not coordinating well with our neighboring agencies. I can tell you we were sending people north to Louisville, and Louisville was sending people south to Superior. So it was this big giant loop, right? Where everybody should have been pushed east on 36 and get out of town, get away from the fire. And so pre-identifying the traffic control points is very helpful because we know this is the area that's going to be heavily congested. So this is the area where we're going to first send our attention to get rid of that. Colton was a nightmare, right? And until we opened up Colton 4 lanes going eastbound, it was gridlock. I got a phone call from one of my neighbors that was sitting in the middle of Rock Creek, and he's like, we haven't moved for 20 minutes. And the minute we recognized that and got people at traffic control points and got Colton opened up 4 lanes going eastbound, things just started to flush out. When we communicated better at the beginning with Swarm and decided, hey, we should start pushing people eastbound. So we'll stop sending them to Louisville. Louisville stopped sending them to us, and now let's send them all eastbound. And now having that traffic control point identified and saying, I need somebody right there so we can push people out a certain direction. So that's been really helpful.
All right, thank you.
All right. The $1 million question, how long? So I can tell you this, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. From the rule of thumb, Department of Highway Transportation Safety has a rule of thumb that about 1,500 to 1,600 cars can go down a single lane of traffic per hour at about a 25 to 30 mile an hour time. So if you take a neighborhood like the census data, look at the homes, it's about 2 cars per home. Most people, if they're both home, are taking 2 cars. It's going to take some time. When I ran the models, though, looking at it with some sort of traffic modeling, and there's not really definitive stuff, but I ran 2 models. One was using a Genesis model, which takes a certain type of traffic modeling, and then there's one out of Old Dominion University that's called Fleet. And running both those models based on our polygons that we have for evacuation, we came out to about an hour and a half for one of those polygons to empty out. So there's this challenge of where's the fire start? How fast is it moving? When does it make entry into the built environment? And now you can start to see how all these things become critical factors. How quickly they make a decision, how fast Steve can get it created, how fast it goes out to the community. So we're shooting for, we call it a required safe evacuation time, which looks at from the first arrival of a first responder, sizing up, making a decision, calling Steve, punching that out, you get it, 30 minutes of milling time, because people have to process. They just don't jump in there and they want to pack things and whatever that is. And then they get on the road. And then from that, it's about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. So if you take all that into account, we're talking about an hour and a half to get people to a safe location away. And if a fire is moving in fast and where it's going, if it's far out, like in Marshall, it's coming in with a wide cone of impact. And if you looked at that Marshall fire, we had 3.2 miles of fire engaging the built environment all within about a 15-minute from south to north impact point. That's overwhelming first responders pretty quick. If it's close in, the impact zone goes concentrated, it happens fast, it gets into the community, but it's narrower in the impact zone. We're still lighting up the same zone to move people. We've talked a lot with our first responders, especially law enforcement, door-to-door traffic management. When you're more in the rural environment or the intermix environment, the door-to-door may make more sense. But when you're doing dense urban evacuations where you now have tens or thousands to tens of thousands of people getting on the road system, the traffic management is a priority because that prevents the backlog. It's the throughput that we're trying to maintain. It's the ability to contraflow if you can, take up all lanes of traffic. But once again, we got to keep a lane open for fire trucks. So this is the balance that you heard the chief talking about that we look at. Mitigation, and this is what we're advocating for. I'm working with City of Boulder on their conflagration plan. The work we're doing in our communities and west of our communities or around our communities is critical. The ability to slow the spread, the intensity, the embers and the smoke, so that there's time to get in place the system and get the fire apparatus in to suppress and contain are the things that make a safe evacuation happen. Otherwise, we're competing with time, and time is the premium here. That is the commodity that we need to think about. So we have ran to your long answer to your question, sir, which I hope has been informative and not too much in the weeds, but we have ran the models. But like Chief says, they're dynamic. One car runs out of gas, one car breaks down, now we got a whole nother problem. So these models are based on everyone's getting out, there's none of these things that happen, smoke obscuring, fields of vision, those sort of things slow traffic down and, it can create problems. So it's the ecosystem that we're trying to make. If an incident happens, we don't want it to be a horrible day. We want it to be as safe as possible. And we want to be able to defend our communities to the best of our abilities. And it requires all these things, the mitigation, the preparedness, the response capacity, the water system, the telecommunication system, and all these things that have to be in place in order to be able to make this work in concert with one another. And if we do that, we have our best chance to have a successful day.
Thank you. Thank you for all that. Appreciate it. Other questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment for Steve. A couple weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to do a ride-along with some of Sergeant Solomon's deputies, and I got a tour of the 911 Operations Center. And I just want to say massive kudos to your 911 operators. I mean, the number of screens that they're looking at any given second and processing the volume of information that's coming in over the 911 calls and what they're having to keep track of and talk to the deputy while they're talking to whoever the caller is, that's a lot of work. And so I just want to say thank you to the 911 operators. They do a tremendous job to keep the community safe and keep the deputies safe.
Well, excuse me, thank you for that. I will absolutely pass that on to our staff. We welcome any of you to come and do a sit-along with us. And thanks for recognizing the dispatchers as first responders. We passed that Senate Bill 1060 or House Bill 1016 last year at the state level, and we're working on doing it at the federal level to make sure 911 dispatchers are recognized as first responders. So please come in and take a tour, and you can even sit along, plug in, and understand what they do.
I've got a quick question. I'm not sure who to direct it to because I appreciate everything that I've heard tonight and the interactions with Larimer County, reassure me there. Could Could someone talk a little bit about interactions with Jefferson or Broomfield County? Because I think a lot about Rocky Flats and the fact that it's U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and you got NREL, which is federal government land, and how that as a potential fire source is being addressed, and then how it may easily jump 128 and get into Superior.
Yep. Larimer County is a lot easier because most of our evacuations is up in the mountains, right? And so our partnership with that has gone really strong. But what I can tell you is our SWAT teams with Broomfield, with Jefferson County, all work together. And so if we need their assistance, they're happy to help us. We assist them all the time as well. It goes back and forth. So it's not just certain agencies. Certain agencies we probably work with more, like Larimer County, because of the type of environment it is up in the mountains. But we definitely have a very good relationship with all of them around. So if we had something in Jefferson County, to be able to tie in with them very rapidly goes very quick. And I'll let Chief Holden talk about the fire side.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, on the fire side, we already work closely with North Metro. We respond over there on a regular basis with them, and they help us. How that would work is dispatch centers would communicate, we'd let each other know, and then we have those common radio channels now, and we'll fall under that instant command system. So we've worked together with them before on other calls, so working with those agencies is pretty seamless for us.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions? Well, thank you again to all our first responders for being here tonight, but also importantly, just keeping our community safe and prepared. I will forever be in your debt for the response to the Marshall Fire. The response on that day obviously was a terrible day for our community, but could have been much worse if it weren't for all of your actions. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. All right, we are on to item 4C, but it's 9:05. Do you want to take 10 minutes? 5 minutes? 5 minutes? All right, 5 minutes, and we'll be back at 9:11. Just want to use the gavel.
It's a different muscle. It's definitely a different muscle.
I've been here before. An air conditioner comes on and like right now.
You're welcome.
I could do the 22nd. Wait, let me see what Tuesday is. I can do Tuesday.
Yeah. All right, we are back, and we're on to item 4C, which is our presentation from BRS with our pool assessments.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm Jordan Hayes, a project manager for the Parks and Rec Department working on this project, and I'm here with our consultant, Barker Rinker Seacat. We have Mary and Jason, and they're going to do a presentation for you, updating on the North and South Pool assessments, which they went out March 18th, had a whole team of subcontractors out there to assess the current site conditions. So they looked at the pools, the building, just the site in general, even the parking lots. So these assessments are really going to help us get our priorities in order for the pool projects, get an idea of kind of where things currently are, so that we can figure out how to proceed. So with that, oh, and just a quick note, this is kind of, this presentation, I think if you refresh your packets, this one might show up. So this is just the combined version of the PDF, just for ease of presenting, so. All right.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. Yeah, as Jordan mentioned, we're going to go through the North and South Pool assessments, kind of giving a lowdown of how those facilities are operating, how they're working, what's good and what's bad for the most part. So here's kind of a quick, just go through a few things here quickly before we dive into all that assessment. But here's kind of our schedule. We're looking at just getting into the schematic design, design development, construction documents, and really throwing this thing out for permit and bidding come August, September timeframe. And then trying to get the place, the goal there is to get the contractor on board and get them building before construction, before winter, and then be able to open the facility up Memorial Day weekend and actually having it up and running a couple weeks before that so they can get ready for the season, all that kind of stuff, get staffing going there. As Jordan mentioned, March 18th, we were on site with all the consultants, mechanical engineers, plumbing engineers, civil engineers, landscape architects, structural engineers. Everyone was kind of digging through the building, seeing what works, what's not working, how it's looking, how it's holding up. And Mary will go through that in detail a little bit. We had a first town workshop with the project team on April 4th. And then we issued this final assessment. I think you may have received a copy of that at some point on April 11th. We issued that report, and we'll touch on that briefly, kind of give you the highlights from that. Public engagement, we had an aquatic user group workshop on April 15th, and we got a lot of data information from them. And then the following night, we had a public open house on the April 16th, and where we allowed the public to vote on a bunch of amenities and features, as well as just give us their comments. So all that in addition to the online survey, which started up at 16th and wraps up in a couple of days here, we'll be able to grab that data and then start to kind of synthesize everything and see how it's coming together for the most part. Trying to find where things line up, where common aims and goals are, so we can really kind of dive into that a little bit further. Again, the idea with our scope of work is really assess the buildings and the condition of them, as well as all the pools and the equipment. Identify kind of a level of service goals for this community and the park and rec system. And then another portion is identify system-wide gaps in the aquatics portion of things. You know, and we've heard a few things a little bit from the public input that we've seen a little bit of insight on. We'll be able to update you all on that the next council meeting. And you'll be able to see today, we'll kind of touch on repair, renovate, and replace, kind of our 3 Rs that we look at. You know, we don't see everything as being replaced. We see some things as being repaired, some things being renovated. Right now, we're going through a quick repair job on the south pools, just to fix one of the filters out there so they can get the season underway. And then looking potentially at new aquatic programs. What else can we do to really spice up the life of some of these facilities? And then again, we're going to look at, you know, code is always of utmost importance to us, and Superior is adopting the new International Building Code come in the near future here. You guys probably recognize this a little bit. This is kind of our checklist where we start with is architecture and interior design. We look at every piece of the building, the roofs, the walls, the ceilings, windows, doors, frames, floors, all that kind of components, and kind of gauge them on a 1 to 5. 5 being the good, almost brand new, 4 being good, and then 3 satisfactory, and we've got a few 2s and 1s here, but you can kind of see how they sprinkle up around. For the most part, the exterior of the building's in great shape. There's just some of the interior components that really needs a lot of work, and especially the pool mechanical systems are in desire need there. And I'll hand this off here, and Mary can go through that for each facility.
Thank you. So starting off with the North Pool, we visited there first. Overall, between us and our structural engineer, we really don't have any concerns structurally with the building itself. There's no obvious major cracks. The facades are in great shape, the finishes, there's no cracks in the stucco and the stone on the exterior, no major leaks in the roof or any issues with the roof there. So overall, the facility is in great shape for its age, and it's been very well maintained. So really what we're looking at is, as Jason said, on the interior where there's just space deficiencies, what's not working currently for the staff for them to be able to really effectively manage this facility. So lacking in quantity of what you have there now or quality would be, there's just no family changing rooms, and we know that's a high priority. No lifeguard space, or just lacking in staff areas and storage spaces for the staff to use as well. And that's also a swim team concern too on storage space there. So that's kind of the interior of the actual bathhouse itself. For the pool equipment at this pool, really in need of replacement or repair. A lot of items are just at the end of their lifespan for pool equipment. So we're looking at replacing the skimmers, the filtration and sanitation systems, pool mechanical system, the equipment and chemical space, really just the amount of room we have for all of the equipment needed. And then the interior finish of the pool shell itself requires some repairs right now. And then looking at the aquatic features that are either outdated, like really could use a refresh, or just kind of missing from this pool. The wading pool, it's not in good shape. So looking at renovating that. Shade structures, kind of adding to those and looking at what we can do to provide more shade on the pool deck. And then interactive aquatic features. This pool really is a dedicated lap pool, so has no other kind of aquatic features that we see at the South Pool. So we're assessing that, and of course that'll just be on the table for decisions to be made. And then for building systems, really some deficiencies there, outdated systems. We know we're discussing the possibility of year-round operations at the North Pool, so that would be requiring upgrades to electrical service to the building. We would have to go from 1-phase power to 3-phase power, especially if we are also looking at a possibility of EV charging stations or other kind of that have big surges in power there. Obviously then heating and insulation. This is not an insulated building at all. It's only seasonal. So we don't have any capabilities right now for year round. And then the plumbing systems, they don't meet current code for low flow fixtures. So we would be looking at updating all plumbing fixtures. And the interior lighting and the deck lighting are both pretty insufficient, especially for year round operations. So we'd be looking at adding a lot more lighting to both the building and the pool deck, and also upgrading everything to LED energy efficient fixtures. So our 3 Rs for the North Pool, and This is really just as like the needs that came out of the assessment. It doesn't necessarily include kind of a wish list amenities we could add to the pool. But our repair, again, the pool shell finish. Some of your lot paving, the handicap accessible spaces in the parking lot do not meet current slope requirements. So we'd require some repaving there of the parking lot. Renovation, we're looking at the restroom and staff areas. We also have some deficiencies for ADA compliance, especially with moving to the 2024 I codes. We have some additional kind of clear space requirements in restrooms. So we would need to renovate those. And then the lobby and check-in area, some ADA concerns there as well, and just wanting to have better traffic circulation, better efficient use of the space. And then replace the pool skimmers. Again, they're just in really bad shape. So we are looking at replacing with a perimeter gutter system, replacing the pool mechanical equipment, doing something with the wading pool, potentially a splash pad. The entry doors are just showing a lot of wear and tear and need to be replaced. And the entry desk and casework, the desk currently doesn't meet ADA height, so we would need to renovate that. And some damaged concrete just around the pool deck. It's not a lot, but there are some areas where there's been some settling of the concrete, and we would just need to repair those particular areas. Also, we have, these are not directly out of the assessment, but additional considerations we are looking into, and these are items that we are kind of getting some cost estimates for currently, so that the next time we meet with you, we'll be able to give you an understanding of a budget amount that comes with each of these items. So things like additional bike racks, we've heard from both staff and swim team that they would love more bike racks. Additional shade structures, potentially expanding the pool mechanical room to give us more space that we need there, upgrading the pool covers potentially to an automatic system. It's a lot less manual heavy, a lot less labor to use an automatic system. So this list here, I'm not going to go through every single item, but it's just to give you all an idea of the other things we are considering at this point. And then, of course, once we are finished with our public engagement, we'll be updating this list with other items from that. Also, just to touch on the sustainability, we are really focused on that in this project. So one consideration is converting the entire facility to electric, also doing things like upgrading the building envelope, which will be required anyways if we want to do year-round operations. The low flow plumbing fixtures, again, upgrading lighting to all LEDs, adding lighting controls, which helps with efficiency. We're looking at potentially 2 EV charging stations. We also could potentially look at the existing solar array and see if there's any upgrades we can do there to help with more efficiency. Are there any questions on the north pool before I move to the south pool?
One of the things that came up during our conversation with our advisory committee on environmental sustainability just this evening was on the sustainability side of things, looking into potential solar heating options. So, as you're going through the checklist of possible sustainability upgrades for both pools, if you could also consider how solar heating could potentially play into this all.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be considering that, and we'll keep that on our list. So for the south pool, we went through the same exercise for both the facility, the bathhouse itself, and the pool. Again, same with the building structure is in really good shape. So there's really no major concerns structurally or with the existing facade or roof. With, again, spaces more on the interior that are kind of lacking for managing the pool would be, again, we don't have family changing rooms at this location either. A staff office space, potentially like a multi-purpose room. We're looking at that for potentially both pools. And also they're just very short on storage space here as well. And ideally we'd like to kind of expand the lifeguard area they have. For pool equipment, the sand filter here at this pool is in pretty bad shape. So we are doing some repairs to it currently, but it will need full replacement sooner probably rather than later. And the filtration system, the water sanitation system here as well, we'd be going away from using liquid chlorine and go to a tab feeder system. And then there are also here some concrete repairs needed around the deck. There's some areas where water is ponding and we would just need to do some concrete repairs there. And then aquatic features, again, the wading pool here is just kind of an outdated feature that's not in great shape, so we are looking at replacing that. As well as the slide and the mushroom fountain, we're looking at just using some more updated, fun aquatic features here at this pool. Again, adding additional shade structures. And then building systems, same thing. This is not an insulated building, it's seasonal, so if we're looking at year-round operations, we would be addressing heating and cooling. The plumbing systems and the lighting, it's also the same as the North Pool. They just need to be updated so they are to code and also address some energy efficiency issues there. So we have our 3 Rs for this building, for the South Pool. There are some doors around the facility that are really difficult to open because of some slab issues and threshold issues, so we need to repair all of those. The deck paving, it's directly limiting, kind of those doors don't open all the way. The deck paving where water's ponding, as I mentioned. The locker rooms, again, we will need to kind of look at these restrooms for the new code and expand some ADA clearances in the restrooms. The lifeguard and staff area is renovating, and then replastering the pool here in this location. And then replace, as I mentioned, the sand filter and mechanical equipment. Again, with the entry desk and casework, the staff would like to kind of see a different way to orient the check-in desk. And then also this pool with the wading pool, looking at replacing it with a splash pad or something like a zero-depth entry play area. The existing slide, we're looking at replacing with a slide with a run out. That would be a slide that ends outside of the pool area so that it doesn't dump into the water. So it kind of, you don't have to limit a whole area of the pool for just the slide. Gives you more space in the pool. And then, as I mentioned already, the mushroom fountain and the shades, looking at replacing them. We also know wind is a big issue at this pool, so we're also going to be considering some type of barrier that could help cut down on the wind on the pool deck here.
Can I ask a quick question before you leave this slide?
Yes.
In terms of the renovate pool replastering? And I noticed there was a comment on the grid about the pool replastering that we did last year, compromise in-floor geysers. This might be a question for Jordan and staff. Like, what recourse do we have with the people that just did this 6 months ago, actually 9 months ago?
I'm not sure. I can get back to you on that. I'm not really in the weeds on how that was addressed at the time, but I can definitely get back to you on that.
Okay, because it feels like it's on the list of things to do now, and we literally just did it. And was it just such a bad job? Okay.
Yes. Yes, it was.
All right. Thanks.
We had our aquatics consultant looked at that and just said that the replastering was done in a way that it's impacting the gutter and the geysers. And so his opinion was that it was just a bad job and it needs to be redone. On to the additional considerations as well for this pool. So above and beyond just the assessments. Again, we're looking at electric heaters for the pool, year-round operations, upsizing the plumbing system. It's currently 1 inch. Our plumbing consultants seem to think that's really undersized for this size building. So there's been some issues with water pressure in the showers. And so if we're renovating the showers and restrooms anyways, we'd like to look at upsizing the plumbing. The wind barrier, as I mentioned, and a couple of our items, a lot of them are very similar to the North Pool in terms of the considerations here, as well as the sustainability. It's really the same items we'll be looking at as the North Pool as well. So.
Yeah, and then the next steps, like I mentioned, the public survey will wrap up April 30th. We'll be able to get the results from that and then start dissecting that and analyzing it. We're coming back for a workshop with the town project team on May 9th, and then we're coming back with you all on May 12th to give you an update of the priorities and kind of some costs associated with everything and kind of let's see what you guys' thoughts are. Any questions?
Mike?
Thank you for the really helpful information. I mean, going through your grid of what needs to be replaced versus what looks like it's in good condition, very, very helpful, and I appreciate that all the hard work that's gone into this so far. So really looking forward to seeing what the community feedback looks like and how that gets sort of layered on top of the technical work your teams have already done. Question for you around the year-round operations. How do we go about assessing whether or not we move forward with year-round operations? And when your final recommendations are presented, will there be kind of two tiers of project costs, like project cost A, business as usual, project cost B, if we decide to go to year-round operations? 'Cause I think, how many people are actually going to use a pool in January when it's 8 degrees below zero and there's ice on the pool deck? So how do we assess moving in the direction of year-round operations if that's the direction we want to go?
Certainly, certainly. Well, what we're kind of thinking is we have basically an a la carte list of everything that kind of want to happen, and we want to prioritize that list to see what's the most important. Pool equipment is probably the most important for the most part. That's where we're very close to the top. And then what other kind of things come into play of priority and prioritizing all those items, and then have a line item for each one of those, a range, to see what you can, so you can almost build your own renovation project to some extent. Say it's pool equipment's $1 million, it's insulating the buildings, and I'm just throwing out numbers here, but then you can kind of gauge what's the best value for our community. Does it make sense to do that, to spend $1 million on a lifeguard chair, or should we do it on the equipment, something of that nature, so you guys can make an informed, educated decision that way? Does that address your question?
So instead of build a bear, it's build a pool.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And of course, it's always the balance of the operations as well, of keeping the pool open year-round, staffing needs. So we're kind of providing one piece of the puzzle.
And then question for town staff, how do we assess what future uses and future use would look like? How do we model that to say, oh yeah, we know that we're really, really busy between Memorial Day and Labor Day, but between November and March, we can still expect to see 300 people a day. How do we assess what future use might look like?
Yeah, and I think that is something that they're going to help us with too. So I don't know if you can.
Yeah, so we've met with our aquatic focus groups already. I think they'll give us a lot of insight there in terms of how many people and how many teams you're looking at providing here. I can't remember right now how many teams they currently have looking at using the facility on the off season. I think it's
at least 2. And then I think Katie Haldeman has been in touch with some other people who have reached out and said, if you do open it, we would be very interested in it. So it's a little up in the air, but people are reaching out with interest about it. So.
Thank you.
You touched on it with the staffing, because that was my concern, is if it's open year-round. I know we already struggle with staffing when school starts to go back in session, but in addition to that, and I think you mentioned this, but I'd want to see what the cost would be to keep it open year-round, both from, heating and electric bills, in addition to what is that staffing price going to look like, just to kind of gauge based on how many people will actually use it year-round versus how much it's going to cost the town to run it, and whether or not we can even get people to run it.
Certainly, we'll look at those numbers.
Yes, and just to add, we have talked a little bit with the swim teams, I think, about if they're just using it for an event, let's say in, November, that they would potentially lifeguard their own meets. So it wouldn't necessarily involve us having our own staff lifeguards work some of that stuff. So just to keep that in mind.
Wouldn't we need to use town staff to open and close the facilities, so that means somebody's potentially on call during odd hours to accommodate the team?
Potentially, yes. Yeah. I mean, we do have our field technicians who do work on call and do, cover throughout the week. So I don't know that it would necessarily be a huge ask for them. And I think kind of the worry with the staffing is more like the lifeguards that tend to be, 17 years old or 19 years old, and they're going back to class. So just kind of addressing that concern a little bit.
And we could also look at some access controls, so you could limit who's in there and when they're in there too. So.
One question that I have, and maybe this is something that is to come on May 12th, but I'm curious if we have any sort of ballpark idea of how much do we think we're going to be spending on kind of like the things that are absolutely necessary to, repair, replace, versus the laundry list of potential nice to have, community desires? Like, are we blowing the entire budget on, all of the things that are absolutely, critical right now to get this thing just kind of like back up and running, or do we have kind of some flexibility to make these into something even better than they are?
So right now, we've got the aquatic designer. He's pricing out all the components to replace the aquatic aspects of things, and then we've got another estimator who's working on all the other items. So we'll be able to come back to you the next meeting and show you what those costs are and what the for each item.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that'll be helpful. I guess from my perspective, I think these are really valuable existing resources. So we want to make sure that they're working and serving the needs of the community. But, given what the voters authorized with the sales tax ballot measure and what we're going to be able to get from the bond financing, in my personal opinion, is just, it would be nice to deliver something that feels new and shiny and doesn't feel like it's just the same old, and there's not necessarily anything new for people to see, and it just looks like what they're used to seeing.
Yeah, I'll say right now, just with some preliminary numbers that we got just today, it looks like we'll easily be able to replace all the pool equipment. And then the upgrades of the building will be kind of the question, how much more do we want to spend on those components? Mm-hmm. But we'll be able to bring all those numbers to you at the next meeting.
Okay. Are we looking at anything, so I know that there's going to be some concrete repairs that need to be done, at least at the South Pool, with some of the settling that's going on. But if we're kind of patching the concrete, there's the potential that the concrete just looks kind of terrible because it's just like this patchwork. I don't know if there's any potential like cosmetic upgrades that we could do to at least make the appearance of it look uniform and not patched and yeah. But you can stain concrete and you can do things to it to just kind of make it look newer and fresher and aesthetically pleasing. So
we'll take a look at some of those options and bring those back to you, some ideas.
Okay. Additional thoughts, questions?
I have one quick one just to circle back to the year-round because I won't unfortunately be able to be here on May 12th, so I'll just ask it now. So I would be interested to know, out of the community outreach, how much of the community wanted it to be year-round, and in addition to who would actually use it. I know you said that there were some organizations that reached out saying they would use it. Are those local swim teams to Superior? Or are they like regional swim teams that were keeping it open year-round for a regional draw?
I think both. So I think definitely the Superior swim teams are interested in it, and then it's kind of those around that are trying to feel us out if we're going to do it or not. Just expressing their interest. So yeah, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get back to you on that. And since you mentioned that, we have gotten over 600 survey results so far, so we're doing pretty well. I'm sure Comms is going to do another push for that, and it closes on April 30th. So we will be sharing that report with you all at that time too.
Great. I mean, to Mark's point, to make the dollars stretch and make sure we're delivering something, kind of shiny and fun and new. That's why I just asked, because I want to make sure that we're not spending a lot of money to winterize buildings and staff and, have electrical and everything that we have to pay for to keep it open year round. If that's not a huge thing for the community, it's more of a swim team thing. And I obviously want to support the swim teams, but for me personally, if we're going to spend, and I imagine it's not a small amount of money, I'd rather divert that to maybe something that benefits the whole community for something they all want.
Sure. And I do think it's kind of the nature of the assessments that this is not really the fun stuff. So we'll get more into the fun stuff in a couple of weeks when we come back with the feedback. So
thank you.
As part of the assessment on year-round operations, I believe Jordan or maybe Leslie at a previous meeting, we talked about the idea of making the bathhouse, at least in the North Pool, year-round, to just serve as like options for the tennis players and whatnot to use the facilities, but obviously not then keeping the pool open. So as part of whatever we get updated on May 12th, I'd like to just kind of see that option, so winterizing the pool, but keeping the bathrooms open.
Yeah, we'll definitely have something on that. And just on that note too, it's also better for the pool equipment if it's in a building that is insulated and winterized too. So it would be a benefit to the tennis players and to just our expensive pool equipment. So.
Okay,
One more thing to add to the list of things that we want on May 12th was we think about the operating costs for the North Pool or South Pool. We got tons of data. What does it cost to operate for one day? And then with these upgrades and enhancements, what does that change, just in terms of the cost envelope? And where I'm actually going with this is we start thinking about operations in the winter. What might the operation cost be in the winter? Because ultimately, if we're going to keep it open in the winter and we want to rent it out, we need to know what our costs are. So it'd be good to know kind of ballpark on what's happening to the cost summer operations and then what would happen to the daily costs winter operations.
Okay, yep, that's definitely something we'll keep in mind.
Thanks.
And I guess as part of that discussion, I guess like keeping the pool open, it's a fluid cost, right? Like heating it in January is different than heating it in October or September. So, the idea of like, if we're building this in a way that, maybe the swim teams aren't interested in January to, March, but they're interested in keeping it open in September and October. Or
definitely
maybe
using
starting
it in September, October. So yeah. Exactly.
So that would be interesting to look at what that would entail. And if that means also not staffing it for the public, but we've got this amenity, the costs are
sunk,
and it's open. We're just keeping it open longer than we have historically in the past. That'd be something I'd be open to.
Yeah.
At that point, do we consider enclosing it?
Well, I mean, I think the budget for that was like $20 million or something like that.
Yeah, but if you're talking about that type of infrastructure cost, the shiny new is great for just the season it's open. Prolonging it, obviously when we talk about the ACES meeting we had earlier today, an enclosed building is going to retain much more heat and it's going to be a lot more efficient to use versus having it open to the air. So maybe that's something you might want to consider. Does it have to be shiny and new and sexy, or does it have to just be a steel building that's going to be insulated and keep the heat in? I don't know. That's food for thought.
Yeah, I don't think that that's in the scope of work right now, right? In terms of what BRS is.
No, it's not. But I'm just saying that if you're going to talk about year-round use of the pool and the type of energy it's going to take to heat it, is there a way to capture the energy and make it more efficient and make it more sustainable than just when you heat the pool in the wintertime, the heat just goes right up into the air.
Yeah, I mean, if money were no object, if we had an unlimited budget, sure, we could do a lot of things. But in terms of the instructions that BRS has been given, based on like the 4 options, when we were looking at like option A, B, C, D, D was the one that had like the enclosed and it had the projections of $20 million or something like that for capital costs. So the direction that we gave them previously was not to look into that. So
yeah, well, like I said, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm thinking that shiny new from Memorial Day to Labor Day is going to really deliver an amazing building with a lot of the bells and whistles you want that are going to have everybody excited about a brand new shiny object. The new car smell versus prolonging it and kind of taking away from that just to have it operating in a longer period of time. I'm just just like I said, just throwing the monkey wrench in there for you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
all right, any additional questions or directions? So in terms of next steps, so we're going to have an update on the 12th, and that's where we're going to give direction on what the contract's going to look like that we would then pass in July. Is that?
No, so this will be more for you all to give us more direction once you've kind of wrapped your mind around the community feedback and just kind of give us a little better idea of maybe where we want to spend, if we wanted proportionally more money spent on North Pool or South Pool, kind of depending on community feedback and your thoughts. So just a little more guidance on that. And like they said, they'll come to us with some kind of, I guess, rough order of magnitude numbers to consider at that time. And then I think what you might be thinking of is the CMGC contract, which we'll come back with. We're going to put that out for bid to get a construction manager on board early in the process. So while we're still doing design, who would then become our general contractor. So just to kind of get the construction, get a head start on that. So maybe that's the contract that you're
Okay, so when are we just kind of thinking in terms of the schedule here? So we've got May 12th, we've got this further meeting, and then when do we anticipate additional kind of pool-centric meetings?
Well, I think the contract that Jordan mentioned is in June.
Yeah, I think
Is that
that would
June?
be
Okay.
like late June.
Late June, okay.
And that's so we can get started with construction as soon as possible.
Right.
So we can be open in May of '26.
Okay. All right. Very helpful. Thank you for your work, and we look forward to continuing the conversation, seeing how the community feedback gets incorporated into some suggestions to make these pools really special.
Great, thank
So,
you. Spread the
thank
word,
you.
shapesuperior.com.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, we are moving right along onto item number 5. We've got project updates, we've got none, and we're onto our consent agenda. Items A through H, subject to the direction that we received from council already. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mark, I had one quick clarification to Nick's earlier comment. So just so I'm understanding, your comment from a couple hours ago does not change the content of the consent items related to the...
Nope, just timing.
All right,
And if we, so this will approve what's in your packet tonight. If we execute, it'll be exactly what you're approving tonight. If we need to change something, we'll come back with a brand new item.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Got a motion from Councilmember Foster.
Second.
Second from Mayor Pro Tem Serbu, and roll call vote, please.
Mayor Lasis,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Serbu,
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Councilmember Shaw,
Yes.
Councilmember Foster,
Yes.
Councilmember Craycraft.
Yes.
All right, passes unanimously. We're on to item 7, which is our public hearing and second reading for a consideration of an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the town's 2025 capital improvement project CIP sales and use tax revenue bonds, maximum aggregate principal amount of $20 million, providing for the use of the bond proceeds to pay or reimburse the town for the costs of capital projects of the town and other details in connection with the bonds, and authorizing the execution of other agreements and documents in connection with the bonds. Do we have proof of publication?
Yes.
All right, I'll gavel in the public hearing.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Jeff Stone, town staff, here just to go over the bond ordinance and bond parameters realistically on what we're looking at doing for bond proceeds after the election back in November. Excuse me. We're looking right now at sometime in June or July to close on the bonds, depending on what the market does and what our financial advisor and our bond counsel think are going to be the best times to do this. The bond parameters ordinance, kind of the biggest things in there, the principal is not to exceed the $20 million. Maximum annual repayment is 1.9. Currently, we're estimating that 1.2. The 1.9 was for Tabor to make sure that we didn't go over that limit. And so that's kind of why those numbers are different. Net effective interest rate not to exceed 5.5, currently estimated at below 5%, and then bonds to mature no later than December 1st, 2020. We're estimated at 25 years at December 1st of 2049 is the way we're looking at this now. We've been working with our financial advisor, Hilltop Securities, Jason Simmons, and Jason is on Zoom with us tonight if you guys have questions for him. But bond proceeds options that we're looking at, trying to get the most proceeds for projects, staff recommendation after talking to Matt and the financial advisor is going out 25 years with debt coverage of 1.25%, meaning you're covered by 25% more than what your debt payment would be. That would bring in estimated about $17.8 million in project funds. Right now, as everybody's aware with what's going on in Washington and the markets, it's up and down and it changes daily. So those numbers may change, but that's kind of our best guess right now. And we'll just see what happens. Once we approve this bond ordinance, it's good for a year. Now, we won't go for a year, but it does give us some time, especially with these projects, the pools and the streets kind of being later in the year. And we do have some money, that if we needed to front load it because we did the reimbursement resolution earlier, we could even push these off to later in the summer, early fall, to get the bond proceeds if we thought it was going to be more favorable interest rates. So that's kind of where we're looking at for bond proceeds. And again, we went out with our financial advisor and did an RFP for the underwriter, and we've selected Stiefel Nicholas as the underwriter for the bonds. And we will work with them to decide how to structure them. And they will be the ones that buy the bonds and then sell them. We will then we've set up a call this week with Standard & Poor's for our rating of the bonds, and really not the bonds, of the town here on May 8th with Hilltop Securities and town staff. So that's kind of where we're looking at on the bond parameters and what we're looking at for hopefully bond proceeds and debt repayment. So that's all I've got.
When do you actually make the call, or when do we make the call with respect to the length of the bonds and the debt coverage? And I see that doesn't need to be decided tonight in connection with the bond ordinance approval.
Here in the next month or so, or depending on when we get close to, going out to sell the bonds with the underwriters, when we need to make that call. But, some type of direction if the board has anything.
Yeah, I mean, my thought right now, barring anything, catastrophic happening with interest rates right now, is to try to get as much project funds as possible. So doing the 25-year bonds with the 1.25 debt coverage is where I'd like to see this head.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just a quick question along those same lines. I don't know the municipal bond market at all, so I'm not, obviously there's an interest rate difference between a BBB plus and an A-, but is there any sort of negative on future borrowing if we've got BBB plus bonds out there?
Jason, do you have an answer to that?
Hi, good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jason Simmons with Hilltop Securities. Each individual bond issuance has a rating. So if you were to have one rating as a BBB, it was just the nature of that individual security. This sales tax is, just limited to the increase that was passed back in November. If the town were to come back with a different type of a credit, a sales tax, maybe that we're pledging a little bit broader sales tax, that rating could be higher. So it is not uncommon for entities to have different ratings for different types of credits issued by the same town.
Fair point. No, okay, that's a good point. We have committed revenue, so got it. And then assuming, that the market's favorable to this, we'll have covenants in there that allow us to pay back early if revenue justifies us to do so, right?
Yeah, correct. Kind of the market standard is a 10-year par call. So, you're a little bit more restricted within that first 10 years. We can generally kind of shorten it to 8 or 9 if we really want to. But in this case, that would impact the proceeds you're going to get. So, really it's after 10 years. After 10 years, you can pay them back with no prepayment penalty whatsoever.
Perfect. All right. Thanks. That's it for me.
All right. Any additional questions for staff? All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
I will open it up for public comment. Anybody here in council chambers want to give public comment? Anybody on Zoom like to give public comment? All right, seeing none. Public comment is closed. And I will circle back for any final questions of staff. All right, I'll close the public hearing and we can discuss. Any discussion? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'd just say that I think the voters passed this, and I know everybody on the council has been really eager to get this going. So thank you, Jeff, for all your hard work working behind the scenes to get this ordinance in place, and I'm really excited to get bond proceeds so we can get all of our capital projects, maybe not all, our high priority capital projects funded and underway for the community.
Agreed. Voters approved this, and I'm really happy and encouraged by, I think, the expediency to which the town is moving forward on, deploying those funds and investing in the community, both in the pools, the roads, parks. So sooner we get this moving, the easier we are to make things happen. So I am fully supportive.
Just got a quick comment. I'm directionally in support of everything here, 25-year bonds with a 1.25 debt coverage. But, there's something to be said, and this is a challenge with debt financing, right? Because, for basically an extra $2 million now, we got $6 million more that we're paying on the back end, relative to the higher coverage ratio, lower interest rate, and the shorter note, right? So it's tough for me to sort of say, yeah, it's great to take the extra 1.9 million today, knowing that we're foregoing $6 million in tax revenue in the back end. I want to maximize the funds right now, which is also why it's important that this have, repayment provision, 10 years from now, so that'll take care of a lot of that back end interest. I do think we'll exceed, the forecast here of 1.2 million pretty easily, so we can repay it and cut back on that back end debt. But looking at the numbers, it's just sort of, it's hard to wrap your head around, like, why are we doing this? But, we need as much proceeds as we can get today because the projects are all due today. 6 million 20 years from now, so that'd be the board of 2044. It's a different story. So.
And at the rate of inflation, that 6 million will be worth
$6.
Yeah. So. All right. Anything further? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Well, I'll just read it because I've got it up here. I'll make a motion to approve Town of Superior Ordinance Number O-7, Series 2025, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Superior authorizing the issuance of the town's capital project sales and use tax revenue bonds, providing for the use of bond proceeds to pay or reimburse the town for the costs of capital projects of the town and other details in connection with the bonds, and authorizing the execution of other agreements and documents in connection with the bonds.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Mayor Lasis, second from Mayor Pro Tem Serbu. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Serbu?
Yes.
Councilmember Shaw?
Yes.
Councilmember Miller?
Yes.
Councilmember Craycraft?
Yes.
Councilmember Foster?
Yes.
Mayor Lasis?
Yes. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. And we're on to our final item of the night. It is item number 8, which is a public hearing and second reading, consideration of an ordinance for Chapter 16 Land Use Code updates for accessory dwelling units, residential occupancy, and minimum parking requirements. Do we have proof of publication?
Yes.
All right, I will gavel in the public hearing.
Oh. Well, I'm Renee Stavros, interim planning and building director. Oh my gosh, I'm used to saying commissioner, and it is well past my bedtime. Councilmember Shaw, you were the only one who was absent the last time we had the presentation, so I don't know that you want me to go through the whole presentation again, but I am here to answer questions.
My absence doesn't justify additional work for everybody else in the room, so don't worry about that.
We didn't make any changes to the ordinance that the council saw at the previous meeting. So unless there's questions for staff.
Yeah, I should have started with that. You didn't recommend changes, so I didn't make any changes. And hopefully I answered your questions. Yeah.
All right, any questions for staff? Great presentation. All right, I'll open it up for public comment. Anybody here in council chambers for public comment? Seeing none, anybody on Zoom like to make public comment? Seeing none, I will return to the council. Any additional questions for staff?
Oh, no, go ahead, you're fine.
Close the public hearing. Discussion. All right, if no discussion.
Well, yeah, actually, this is the discussion we have where Town 15 comes into play, correct?
What do you mean?
It's within the Planning Commission's, the recommendations of what to do with Town 15. And we did have residents come tonight and have a plethora of signatures. of what they would like to see Town 15 be listed as in the, going forward, where it sets parameters for what future boards can utilize that land as.
Right.
So can we have a discussion on that?
I mean, it's not.
That's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an agenda item, and right now it's just, this is an ordinance that's amending the land use code for ADUs and occupancy limits and parking requirements for multifamily developments, so.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure because, multifamily developments is affordable housing. While I am very, very in favor of affordable housing, I want to make sure that we're very sensitive to where it goes on, routes that are close to like RTD, where it's not a car accessory to get to it. It's along a, public utility path of transportation. I just want to make sure that we're sensitive to what the people had said today. They came up, they talked, they had 200 some odd signatures. I want to be very sensitive to what we do with some of the land we have and what uses we're going to have in the comprehensive plan.
Well, I don't think that anything that we're dealing with in the land use code amendments that we're dealing with tonight limits our capacity in any way to deal with the Town 15 discussion, which we'll have at a different date.
I just want to make sure.
The only multifamily thing really that's going to change here is parking in places that don't have any housing right now. So this really has no effect on anything. I would say has no effect on anything on Town 15 because I feel like everything sort of does. But the big piece here is ADUs and then a language cleanup. More ADU stuff. And then there's a lot of big charts in there that kind of reference a lot of, setbacks and all that stuff. But we really just put those all in there, the repeal and replace for ADU stuff, accessory uses, ADU stuff, and then that parking in the transit zones, which is way north.
Okay, great. Nick, thank you.
So, in my understanding, Town 15 is about rezoning that from what it is now to something different. And this is about the code on whatever the zoned land is when a development proposal comes through or an ADU request comes through. So,
Yeah, that's correct. This has no effect on what the council can decide in the future for the Town 15.
okay.
Or any parcel.
Or any parcel, correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
All right. Any additional questions, comments?
Just a basic comment to staff, given the ADUs are now sort of across the entire town, are we going to remind the HOAs or sort of just let them know? Okay.
Yeah, we'll have communications.
Perfect. Thank you.
We had a good conversation about that last time.
Okay. I didn't watch the
they
notes yet.
feel heard.
Good.
Are we tracking like how many ADU applications we're getting and just kind of monitoring that? It would be interesting to know like to what extent this is actually something that's, widely used or not.
Yeah. We haven't received any applications for ADU in like Rock Creek or any of the HOA areas. Mainly in Original Town is where we've seen the ADUs, but.
Well, right now, I don't think they're permitted per se. They're not allowed in Rock Creek, I don't.
Sorry. We gotta get you on mic.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking like maybe in the comprehensive plan update, if we could include something about kind of the lay of the land in terms of this is how many homes we have in Superior as a whole, and this is how many ADUs we have.
Yeah,
today.
we have some of the numbers that have rebuilt with ADUs in Original Town, and we kind of have a general idea of how many were permitted beforehand. We know there's existing ADUs in other neighborhoods that aren't currently called an ADU per our building code, I guess is the best way to put it. And we're hoping that with the updates and the information that we go out with the comms team, that we can bring some of the existing ones into compliance with the new codes, and then allow other folks to add them and tracking them is an interesting we can track them as far as they are permitted in community core. But other than that, there's really not a good way to track them.
Yeah, I guess I'm more curious than anything else, just because of, if we're talking about housing needs assessments that are being done, and just kind of like, how many homes do we have in Superior right now, and how many are permitted? What could we actually fit? And then how much is kind of organically like infilling throughout town through ADUs? It would just be kind of an interesting data point to understand, what we're doing to kind of meet the additional housing demands of the community.
Yeah, that's something we can track. As people pull permits to
Yeah.
build ADUs, we'll have that information and be able to report it back to the council, especially, in Rock Creek neighborhoods or other subdivisions as well.
Has anyone to date pulled a permit strictly for an ADU while they already have an existing property? Like in the original town, has somebody already built a house and then come later on for the ADU?
Not that I'm aware of.
There are some homes that have been built with the intention of building an ADU, but, and some folks have built their house and moved in and are building an ADU, which isn't quite finished. So they, pulled two separate permits, which allows them to move into the one that's finished first and then finish the remaining one, whether that's the ADU first or the primary structure first. It's kind of gone both ways, I think, in several different parcels, but generally speaking, there's I don't know that there's any that are like waiting, I guess, like out there. There may be unknown ones in the future, I don't know.
All right. Any additional questions?
Just a comment, I think it might be hard to track some of these, because I think there's a lot of value, because what the state wants to do is create more housing. It'd be great if we had metrics. It's when you start converting basements and attics that we don't necessarily you don't necessarily need to pull a permit if you already have a finished basement and you lock the door. Or do you?
I mean, there are certain codes for fire protection and things, so most people are gonna have to do some sort of permit in order to create a space that meets requirements as an accessory dwelling unit that separates the spaces and go through some process.
Okay.
And we can track those in the building permit system. I know we have numbers for original town, I just don't know them off the top of my head.
And there might be some overlap with licensed STRs.
Yeah.
It's more of to Neil's point, right? Like, there are these demands, unfunded mandates that are coming from the state about housing. So it would be interesting to have like all the data points available to us to the extent that we can, to just show how those demands are being met. All right. Any additional questions, comments?
I just want to thank Renee. I was in her office at 8 o'clock this morning asking her a building question, and she's been up 14 hours now. So thank you for your steadfastness and your willingness to stick with us.
You're welcome.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve Town of Superior Ordinance number O-8, Series 2025, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Superior, amending portions of Chapter 10 and Chapter 16 of the Superior Municipal Code concerning land use.
Second.
All right, we got a motion from Mayor Lasis, second from Councilmember Foster. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Miller?
Yes.
Councilmember Foster?
Yes.
Councilmember Craycraft?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Serbu?
Yes.
Mayor Lasis?
Yes.
Councilmember Shaw?
Yes.
All right, passes unanimously. All right, and unless there's anything further, I will adjourn at 10:10.